Hey guys, welcome to Gaijin Olguin, The Origins, with Tony N.
Sarah,
Today we'll be covering our interest in Japan, starting with,
our channel title, Gaijin Olguin. Gaijin means foreigner in Japanese, and Olguin is our last name. We thought it sounded rhymey, so we went with it. Gaijin Olguin.
so now I think to start off at the very beginning of our very first interaction experience, yes, with Japan, Japanese, anime, stuff like that. I remember back in middle school when Pokemon cards just blew up. Everybody had them. It was just this crazy cartoon from Japan, or Japanimation as we used to call it back then, kids. Um, and I remember everybody's collecting cards, watching the TV show, and I remembered if they have this kind of cool cartoon, I've heard of Dragon Ball Z and Sailor Moon, but that was about it at that point.
I also watched Pokemon. I loved the movies, and but my first real anime that I watched was Escaflowne. It did air on television for a few episodes, but it quickly got too violent. Um, so it was taken off the air. I did have the opportunity later to watch the series from a friend. They also came out with a movie. The thing is, though, they gave the idea of the storyline to three different people. One did the TV show, one did the movie, and one did the manga.
Mhm.
And so they have three very different stories with the same character names. And so it's very interesting to compare.
And my first full anime that I watched from beginning to end was Neon Genesis Evangelion, which turned out to be the most essentially quintessential anime that there has ever existed, and the fact that it was my first full in-depth experience into anime and Japan culture in a sense was pretty mind-blowing.
Yeah, that's one that I had not heard of until I met you.
And what did you think of it?
It's very sad and very different than the other anime that I had watched prior.
And watching these shows, it piqued my interest of like, hey, is there a place like where can I get more anime aside from just friends that I knew, maybe Amazon, which was just starting to sell anything that was not books. And I found out conventions. There had actually been a convention going since the early 80s, and it was the first convention I went to called Acon. And I went there for the first time back 2003. I dressed up, I had an amazing time. So much thrown at me, there's from manga that they were selling to adult anime. So it was interesting to see the full spectrum of everything that Japan had to offer.
I didn't go to my first convention until I met you. So it was like fall 2009. I went to a really small local one, and it was really an interesting experience going through all of the different shops and meeting voice actors. Like, that was not something that was even on my radar.
Since being with me, I definitely, like, oh, I want to go to Japan. I want to go to Japan. I've had that thought since pretty much when I was 14 years old. It's like, I want to go and see this place that I've heard stuff about and the place where anime comes from. And you hear these crazy Japanese stories that make it to the US every once in a while. You're like, it sounds like a pretty cool place. And so it was my goal. I'm going to make it. I'm going to make it. I kept telling people, oh, maybe next year. And finally, I was able to in March, April of 2015.
Yeah, going to Japan was one of those bucket list items for me. You know, Australia, Ireland, Japan. I mean, it was on there, but it wasn't ever at the top of the list until I met you and you went.
Yes.
And the passion that you show for Japan, Japanese food and culture. I mean, it's not just anime, it's
Right.
everything.
Absolutely. And it was truly I want to say a humbling experience because I had built up Japan in my mind. And granted, I pretty much stayed within the borders of Tokyo, outside really just to Kawasaki for a festival. But it was exactly what I thought it was going to be. but also so much more. That the experience, even built up in my head over 15 years, still the experience exceeded it. And being lost there for 14 days, and I say lost because I had no plan, there was no itinerary,
No hotel.
no hotel. If you take one thing away from all future videos, at least plan the hotel in advance.
Yeah.
But luckily, I was able to get it cheap. But after spending 2 weeks there and coming back, it was truly, there was the need to go back again with you and then to live there, because it is such just a complete change of almost everything. The way everything is viewed, from people to food, was just truly mind-blowing.
So part of our goal with the channel is to document our journey of how we're getting to go to Japan as a couple, and then our eventual move to Japan. So we'll include things like the Japanese crate, so we'll be trying Japanese snacks.
Right.
We're going to try some Japanese cooking. We may make our own sushi.
Ooh.
And then we're also going to include budgeting, because from what we have seen so far in our research for this trip is that Tokyo is not that expensive of a city. The most expensive part of our trip is going to be the flight.
Absolutely. A lot of people have this built-in idea that Japan, but more importantly like Tokyo, Kyoto, Osaka, are just going to be absolutely expensive everywhere you go. Like you're spending $15 for 2 hamburgers at McDonald's. That is not the case. So we're going to show
how we plan to go and what we plan to do and see, and our estimations for how much it's going to cost.
Right.
And right now, I think it's going to be less than $100 a day for both of us, not including souvenirs, because that can get really expensive really fast.
Right.
But just for food and travel.
So I'm budgeting not just for the trip itself, but beforehand, because
Yes.
You don't want to go out there with an expectation of, hey, I think I got it budgeted, because they're giving us such realistic numbers, and it's not.
Things change.
Mhm.
So, well, we're going to give you a guideline of how it's going to cost for us, and then we'll do a recap after the trip, obviously. Even if you go to exactly the same places and eat exactly the same food, which I don't know why anybody would do exactly what we do.
You're cool, babe.
It may cost you differently, so just keep that in mind.
Absolutely. But that'll be our journey. I will also post the videos I did previously when I was in Japan, give my notes on them as well, and you can look for that later on the channel.
So we hope that you join us for our journey.
Yay!
And until then,
Johnny!